everybody. Welcome back to Sweet Jams and Chutneys here on Hot FM 105. I am Lee McManus. This is Mohsen Raza
Hello,
Shah.
everybody.
He is actually a musician in his own right. He's practically a superstar already.
Not at all. Thank you so much, though.
I know you kick out the jams, as they say, and that's what we do on Sweet Jams and Chutney, sharing some great music from our cultural histories of the United States and Pakistan. I can assure you, I'm hearing these Pakistani music selections for the very first time, thoroughly enjoying it. And, you know, this is such a neat show for me, and I think for Mohsen here too, because, you know, not only are we learning about each other's songs from our upbringing, and even before we were born, in most cases, there is an element to culture being influenced by music and all sorts of art, and art in turn turning it on its head and like creating and influencing culture. And I find that fascinating. So I'm not a historian, but one of the things we do on the show is talk about a little bit what was going on culturally in each of our countries, and seeing how that influence permeated the music. So with that, let's get started.
Absolutely, Lee. Pleasure to be here once again, and I'm looking forward to hearing what you have planned next for us as the first track from the U.S. on this episode.
Vice versa. So we're going to start with an American song. We were chatting offline a little bit how it's considered by many a rock anthem. So the first episode started in the mid-'60s. We had to start somewhere.
Yeah.
So we're going a little bit later 60s, early 70s, let's say. Only time for just a tiny bit of songs per episode. So I've chosen two. The first one is called Voodoo Child by the artist Jimi Hendrix. It comes from 1968. So let's have a listen.
So I do want
Lee McManus with Mohsen Raza Shah. We just listened to Jimi Hendrix's Voodoo Child all the way back from 1968. So probably one you know already, Mohsen, but I'm dying to hear what you think.
Well, as a guitar player, Jimi Hendrix has my undying respect forever. He is one of the finest guitar players the United States has produced, and he kind of broke down the barrier between a rhythm guitar player and a reed guitar player. So he's got the riffs coming in, he's got those ripping solos coming in, and he's got a very unorthodox, very upfront and in-your-face style of guitar playing that was not really done before. And once he started creating music like this, it was psychedelic rock. It made you feel something completely different entirely. And the song does speak about his African-American origin as well, and how he's been how times were at the time in the United States for people of color back in the day. But from his music, honestly, you can see there's this sort of aggression, but not in a like angry manner. There's a little bit of preaching of peace towards it as well.
Yeah.
Other than that, it's been like recorded so well.
Oh yeah.
It's truly a rock anthem in my opinion.
Was it on the album Electric Ladyland, I want to say?
Yes. Indeed.
And well, that's I mean, hearing that from a musician, a lot of musicians I've talked to in my life kind of give a tip of the hat to Mr. Hendrix. Purely as a listener and a fan myself, this is one of my go-to songs also. It just, as they say, takes me away to that special place. And full volume. There's the funny expression in the United States, this one goes to 11.
This one goes to 11, yeah. You've got those amps that go up to 11. You know, Marshall actually did build a few amps. I think they were for Jimi Hendrix. That the knobs did go all the way up.
Oh,
to
did they
11.
now? Okay.
Because
Yeah.
he was using
Yeah.
a lot of effects on
Yeah.
there, and honestly, guitar effects were not
Yeah.
really that widely used back in the day
Yeah.
when you listen to music
Oh
from
my
that era.
goodness. Yeah.
He was using the wah pedal in that opening riff,
Yeah.
and it just made it sound all. I mean, there's people right now who are still struggling to get the Jimi Hendrix. I'm sure most guitarists would
Oh.
agree with me. The Jimi Hendrix tone, you can't get it. Only
Yeah.
you can play it.
Yeah, and what is just so cool about him is he improvises so much.
Yeah.
And that's something that I really appreciate about music, because I do that when I get into like creative writing, and I call it like channeling my muse. And I think Hendrix did that. Everybody who's an artist has their own technique, but I think he got into that. And I would agree with you. Particularly this song, I think is a little nod of respect to his origins. I mean, the African Americans came over from Africa to the United States largely as slaves, and a lot of them came from West Africa. And thank goodness slavery was abolished by President Abraham Lincoln, and
Amen.
that was just a horrific chapter of a century or two in the United States that never should have happened. But since then, African American culture retained its, let's say, African influences, and clearly it did with Jimi Hendrix. And some of the lyrics, I think, again, my own personal interpretation, is like a nod of respect to, in this, he mentions voodoo, that was a religion that sprang from West Africa, and then it got into the Caribbean and even into the United States a little bit. So that's a cool element to it. And the fact that he was coming out of the civil rights era, which was in full swing in the 1960s, particularly African Americans demanding that they be treated as equal citizens and have equal rights in every respect. So musicians, even I'd say starting from the 1950s rock and roll era up through the 60s, they always kind of had a special carve out of acceptance by the wider American audience. And so that, I think, looking back in time, for me is kind of cool that, not just in music, but, even sports, African Americans were becoming more integrated and accepted much more widely than just, let's say, in certain communities.
They had a lot to offer that wasn't really being put out.
Yeah.
And once it got recognized and they were welcomed and received, music like this started to come out.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad that it did.
Me too. Because Martin Luther King, who was a civil rights leader, most people are aware of him. In fact, he was assassinated in 1968. But one of his famous speeches, he was saying, he looks forward to the day when his children will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And, the United States is far from perfect, but that's an ideal that we still aspire to. And Jimi Hendrix, in this case, I mean, he was a gentle soul. I don't know if you've watched any of the old interviews of him, but he was so gentle, and he was such an artist. And today, it's really cool that young musicians such as yourself, still kind of recognize that he was a musical pioneer, let's say. So yeah, that's any final thoughts on him or his music?
Jimi Hendrix, we love you, and I wish we could hear more music from you.
Yeah.
But from the music that you have given us, all musicians, listeners, and particularly guitarists, we thank you. Yeah,
and me too, as a consumer of wonderful music.
All right, so with that, shall we
Yeah.
move on to a Pakistani track that I would like
Absolutely.
to put forward?
Yeah.
Something that you would find interesting is that this song is a little bit not from the rock era, but from the disco era. I'm sure you can check it out when you hear it. This song's called Disco Deewane by Nazia Hassan.
Oh, let's do it.
Welcome back to episode 2 of Sweet Jams and Chutney. My name is Mohsin Raza Shah and I have Mr. Lee McManus here. We've just heard Nazia Hassan's Disco Deewane, a song from the late 1970s. And Mr. Lee, I would like your first impression on this.
Mohsin, every song you brought to me from Pakistan just makes me want to jump out of this chair and start dancing
All right.
in a club or at a party. Clearly, that song is disco. Now that's
The name of the song is
Yeah.
Disco Deewane, which essentially
Yeah.
means disco lovers.
well, and aptly named because I love disco. As you know, I've said throughout the show, I love all kinds of music as long as the music's good or the song is good. That's a really good song. And I heard a little maybe an ABBA influence.
Yeah, you could
I'm
say.
a big fan of ABBA. I would definitely listen to some other songs by this artist.
Nadia Hassan. Well, this was actually,
Yeah.
she's actually there was a very famous duo called Nazia and Zuhaib. They're brother
Ah,
and sister.
okay.
And they kind of revolutionized the disco and pop music
Yeah.
scene in Pakistan. Because
Yeah.
around this time is when we started to trade culturally. I mean, after 1947, Pakistan becoming an established country, by the
Yeah.
late 70s, we started
Yeah.
trading cultures,
Yeah.
getting in influences from people, bringing in their music
Right. Yeah.
from different parts of the world. And
Uh-huh.
the instruments used in this, you can hear synthesizers, you can hear guitars, you can hear stuff that is kind of deviant from the traditional music that was being created in Pakistan earlier, something with the traditional instruments of South Asia that we had. But this time around, it was a little digital. They had
Yeah.
computers going, they had those synthesizers going, you can hear
Yeah.
guitar in there, you can hear
Yeah.
electronic drum machines in there as well.
Yeah.
So this was, I believe, one of the steps that the Pakistani music industry took that led them to become, let's say, creating better quality production of music
Yeah. I got
and
you.
become better musicians. So I would say this was a little bit, well, not a little bit, quite a bit of a revolutionary
Yeah.
track in the history of Pakistan.
Tell me what you think, Mohsen. I've sometimes wondered about was disco, that style of music, a precursor to like modern electronic dance music or trance music, because the instrumentation they use gets a lot more with electronic gadgets than
Traditional instruments?
than previously.
I would agree.
Yeah.
I would agree, but I mean, disco music does have the involvement of both. I mean,
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of disco bands,
Yeah.
and nowadays, honestly, from in 2020, there's one of my favorite artists called Tom Misch, and he's been creating disco music, like retro disco music, using traditional instruments but with a modern sound.
Okay.
But back in the 1970s, I believe there was not a lot of instrumentation that people could work with here in Pakistan.
Right.
But when you hear this track, you can definitely hear a lot of orchestral elements as well, like those chordal arrangements, those little passages and bar pieces in the middle.
Sure.
They're played on the violin or the strings.
Yeah.
That kind of diversify the concept of disco happening in Pakistan. So
Okay.
it's not just pure dance floor music.
Right.
Those little melodies and those little
Yeah.
passages of music that take you from the verse to the chorus kind of put you in this dreamy state.
Yes.
And
yes.
those long notes on the violin. And
Yeah.
it's like this entire riser on an orchestra. So keeping in mind this is all played on a synthesizer.
Yeah.
So it kind of does reflect on how we would want it to be performed live,
Sure.
but how it's also
Yeah.
contained and giving a unique sound. And
Yeah.
honestly, synthesizers from the 70s is the retro sound that we were looking for.
Yeah. I think what my reference to trance music earlier was this song that we just listened to, and others similar from the disco era. It does put me kind of in a meditative state, but like moving my body. So
Absolutely.
there's even a movement out there called ecstatic dance.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard of that, but that's where people just get together and they put themselves in a trance, perhaps not unlike the Whirling Dervishes or something like that, but dancing and completely letting your mind go. So that's what I loved about that song we just listened to. Was it totally like turned off any worries I might have in my brain and just like took me away to a place where I wanted to just have a good time and think happy thoughts.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Shall we
Yeah.
go on to the next
Yeah,
track?
let's do it. So, introducing the next American song selection from 1971,
All right.
a big singer, Janis Joplin, singing her hit song, Mohsen Raza Shah. And we're just chilling, talking about music we love and music that makes us happy. So we just listened to Janis Joplin, who put out a posthumous after her death hit, 1971, Me and Bobby McGee. So what do you think?
I like Bobby McGee. I'm sure she's in love with Bobby McGee.
Yeah.
Song's a very, very beautiful song. Nice open road, a
Uh-huh.
nice convertible is all I need
Yeah.
to just drive through on an open highway and have
Yeah.
this play. There's a lot of country elements going on in there. I could definitely hear a harmonica
Yes.
and there an acoustic guitar player.
Yeah.
So very country and
Yeah.
an interesting take on country music,
Yeah.
in my opinion. I haven't heard a lot of Janis Joplin, but from her voice, I feel like she was a very powerful vocalist.
Oh my goodness.
And like whenever I would hear her like vocals crescendo by the end of it, it would just reflect a lot of emotion.
Yeah.
And all of the instrument players by the end of it start to jam out. So
Uh-huh.
that being a guitar player, I feel like I want to play the song live.
Well, for having heard it for the first time, you must be an old soul, Mohsen, because that's exactly what I think the song is about too.
Oh, great.
And first off, when I think of Janis Joplin, and I know a little bit of her history as a singer, she's part of that 27 Club, as they call it.
All
Have
right.
you heard of that?
Yes.
So
So was Jimi Hendrix, I believe.
yes, he was.
Indeed.
And it's not a club you want to belong to, but where a really talented person dies at such a young age. But we appreciate what they left for us, and
Separate the art from the artist from time
Yeah.
to time, yeah.
exactly. And Janis Joplin, her personality, because I've watched enough interviews of her. Again, all this music came out before I was, born even. But her personality reminds me a lot of my older sister, and who has passed away. So she has a special place in my heart, Janis does, because she always makes me think of my sister, who I loved, of course. And you're right, Janis Joplin just had her own unique singing style. Another time just brings a smile to my face whenever I hear her voice. She really, I think, was one of the first, if not the first, American female pop power singers. She had a string of hits during her life. Another one we mentioned offline was Take a Piece of My Heart.
Yeah, well, very nice song.
Yeah.
Yes.
And little history on this song was it was written by a who's still alive, Chris Christopherson, as a country song, and he had, and as songwriters often do, they sell their songs to other artists. So it was picked up by a guy named Roger Miller, who sang it purely as a country song. And I've heard that, and it's good. I like Roger Miller's voice. Probably one of his biggest hits was called King of the Road. That's a fun listening song by Roger Miller. Anyway, so Janis is introduced to the song she's friends with Chris Christopherson, and she likes it. And unbeknownst to Chris Christopherson, she decides, well, no, he knows that she's going to sing it, but just doesn't know what the product is going to be or what Janis is going to do with it. And as I read about this song was Chris Christopherson, the guy who wrote the song, first time he heard it was the day after Janis Joplin was declared dead. And, can you imagine, being friends and then, hearing her voice, what she did and how she completely transfigured this song from a country song to just a kind of a power rock ballad almost, but still with those country elements. So I thought that was really cool. And another thing I like about it, and getting into cultural history a little bit of the United States, there is what I would call a California motif in a lot of the 1960s songs, because California was the place to be.
Absolutely. West Coast.
Yeah, West Coast. Even the some say the birthplace of the hippie movement in San Francisco. Early folk song from 1967 Monterey Pop Festival. Scott McKenzie singing, if you go to San Francisco, be sure to wear a flower in your hair. So Janis Joplin, she sang at that pop festival in 1967.
What a time to be alive.
And that's how she got nationally known, was singing at that pop festival in 67. So her career just skyrocketed after that. And in this song, references to California, they're drifters, they're just enjoying driving across America to get to California. And once they're there, these two friends part ways. So Bobby in American English can be either a female name or male name. Yeah. So Chris Christopherson's a man, so in his mind, Bobby McGee was a woman. Janis Joplin sings it as if it was her boyfriend,
All right.
going across the country. So, lots of fun elements in that song.
Lots of fun interpretation, and that's what I love about it. It's open to interpretation. So, you can have this song fit any situation.
Totally. So most of I'm really looking forward to hearing the second Pakistani song of this episode.
So for the second Pakistani song, I've chosen something that is one of my all-time favorites. It's called Al Bela Rahi by Alamgir. And I'm sure once you hear the track, you'll figure out what it's about.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Cool.
राहों में गाता चला हूँ, नगमे सुनाता चला हूँ, सबको बताता चला हूँ, इंसानी रूहें दुनिया में सिर्फ है प्यार की प्यासी, सिर्फ है प्यार की प्यासी। अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही, घर ना ठिकाना, ना कोई अपना बेगाना, फिर भी है सबसे याराना, प्यार जगा दूं हर दिल में, गुजरूं जिधर से मैं राही, गुजरूं जिधर से मैं राही। अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही, राही, अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही, अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही। आज जो है कल ना होगा, सांस का क्या है भरोसा, कम है खुशी गम ज्यादा, ये सारी खुशियाँ अपना लो, गम को बनाओ ना साथी, गम को बनाओ ना साथी। अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही, अल बेला राही, मैं हूँ अल बेला राही, अल
Welcome back to Sweet Jams and Chutney here on Hot FM 105. I am your host Mohsin Raza Shah. With me I have my co-host Mr. Lee McManus, and we were just listening to Alamgir's Al Bila Rahi. Al Bila Rahi, sir. It's the song essentially means a destination-less traveler, a wanderer of sorts. What did you think of the song?
So that melody, that kind of message just really speaks to my heart because some say, you know, a U.S. diplomat or any diplomat, it leads a nomadic life of sorts. Modern day, you know, nothing like, you know, the nomads from the, 3,000 years ago. I love it because I just, when I listen to good music like that, it one of two things or both at the same time. It makes me want to meditate or it makes me want to dance. And the best combination is meditating while you're dancing. And that's what I want to do when I hear that song.
So dancing in its own is a form of meditation, I believe.
Completely. And that melody, I've always loved it. And I could see myself dancing by myself or with my sweetheart or just chilling with friends. I do drink beer, so, drinking a beer. A lot of settings I see myself listening to that song and just forgetting the cares of the world and focusing on the important things of life. If you boil it down, what are those important things? It's love of your friends, love of your family. It's all centered around love.
Absolutely.
Including, I have many dogs in my life, so I love my dogs too. So.
Sweet.
Yeah.
So this song talks about the joys of being a wanderer, a free spirit who roams, much like yourself, I'm sure.
Okay.
And no cares, no worries. Song's lyrics are written by a famous Pakistani poet, Ahmad Rahi. And generally the song depicts open roads, open fields, clear blue skies, something that you could generally vibe to during the daytime, during the nighttime, but honestly it's something that just makes you want to get out there on the road by yourself from time to time. And I feel like that's one of the best ways of self-discovery, is just being by yourself and for me personally, listening to music and have it influence me and my behavior.
Right.
This song, I can hear a lot of Latin instruments in it. I can hear the cowbell as well as the congas.
Yeah.
And it's kind of reflective of how international cultures were slowly coming into Pakistan at the time. And we were trying to accept it and recreate it in our best possible way.
I can hear that. I mean, clearly that's a Latin influence.
Yeah. And it's got a nice swing to it, a good slow rhythm.
Yeah.
And a very powerful vocal by Alamgir, who happens to be one of the renowned vocalists of Pakistan.
Yeah.
And
that has to be like a recurring theme too with a lot of musicians, even such as yourself, of living a life of the heart, living according to your heart, drifting, being a nomad, whatever you want to put on it, like that. The Janis Joplin song we listened to was about two drifters, but enjoying each other's company. So, what's it like on the road? You travel a lot as a musician.
It is a little taxing, but the best part about it is you get to see a lot of new places. And personally, I love providing music to people who have not heard it before. So we just did a tour in the States earlier, and we came across a lot of audiences that have never heard of the music that we've been performing, although it may have been big in Pakistan. It was just a completely different experience to show it to someone for the first time, perform it for them live and have them see what it... But on the road, it does get desolate. You get... There's seldom these moments where you catch yourself in a state where you're like, oh, I'm here in this new city all by myself, and there's anything I could do. So you just take a run down the street, come back panting and go like, all right, that's enough for now.
Well, that's super cool. You toured all over North America?
Yeah, it was in North America. We started from the West Coast, going down the middle up towards the East Coast, and a lot of different cities, Lots of
Yeah.
open roads, lots of 7-Elevens.
And your audiences sound like we're just a mixture of all sorts of Americans, not just Pakistani
Okay,
Americans.
so that's what I'd like to do. So before the show, I would like to meet
Yeah.
a few new people
Yeah.
outside in the parking lot and have
Yeah.
a conversation with them. And by the end of it, I'd be like, hey, I'm going to be performing in that ballroom right there. So if you want to listen to some Pakistani music, come in with a fresh set of ears
Cool.
and let me know what you think. So I did make a lot of
Very nice.
friends
Yeah.
showing them music, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's the best way you would want to make friends with someone being a
Totally.
musician. So yeah, on the road it was fun, but and our audiences they were
Yeah.
diverse,
Yeah.
but from time to time we would get the general Pakistani audience because most of the music
Sure.
that we were performing was in
Yeah.
Urdu. So for people to understand that,
Yeah.
but then again, music does transcend the boundaries of language. And if you're speaking about something good and if you're singing it with the purity of your heart and playing
Yeah.
it with the purity of your heart, I'm sure the listener doesn't need to understand music or the language for that matter.
No doubt. No doubt. Could not agree more.
All right. So I guess that was our second song for this episode.
Yeah, that's a wrap on episode 2.
All right. So thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in to episode 2 of Sweet Jams and Chutney. Be sure to stay tuned for more content and more music. We're going to be carrying these series of episodes forward. My name is Mohsin Rashad. This is Mr. Lee McManus. And thank you for tuning in to Hot FM 105.
Thanks, Moses.
All right.